Lone Rider here, and I want to talk about this. Now, for those of you who've been in the desert training for the Mars mission or otherwise haven't gotten any news for some reason, this guy's name is Jesse Smollett, and he is apparently an actor. Now, I had never actually heard of him until this occurred because I don't watch all that many new TV programs, and I don't follow celebrity gossip. But apparently this individual claimed that he had been walking at 2 in the morning in cold winter's night in Chicago during a polar vortex when it was like 20 below with wind chill. He got up at a late hour of the night, early hour of the morning, and he was hungry. So he decided to go out for a sandwich at a Subway restaurant. Now, I don't know about you. I've been in Subway restaurants, not all that often because it's not my favorite thing, but I've been in Subway restaurants. I've never seen a rich actor in one. I don't know. Maybe I just hang out in the wrong Subway restaurants, right? But seriously, I have been in them. I've never seen a rich actor eating there, so I don't know. I mean, something tells me he's not the Subway type, but maybe he is. I don't know. But 2 in the morning, like most of us, if we get up at 2 in the morning, especially when it's inclement weather to the point where it's dangerous to go out of doors in those conditions, such as potentially lethal wind chills, most of us, if we do get up at 2 in the morning in our nice warm beds with the munchies, we go downstairs and we look in our fridge or in our kitchen cabinet. We don't leave on foot to go walk across town at 2 in the morning in Chicago on a cold winter's night in sub-zero temperatures during a polar vortex. But that's what he said he did. Now, while doing this, he was coming back with the sandwich, and apparently he got attacked by 2 racist thugs. That was the message he was saying, that they punched him, they kicked him, they poured some, I think it was like bleach or something on him, and then they tried to choke him with a rope. And when I heard this, I thought it was awful. Who does that to somebody, right? I mean, like most people in this country, I was sort of outraged. Except then I thought about it and I said, the story doesn't make sense, right? And I think there were a lot of people saying that very early on, because just start out with the fact that who goes out at 2 in the morning to get, even if you've got a serious case of the munchies, who goes out at 2 in the morning in lethal sub-zero temperatures to get a Subway sandwich? Like, is Subway even open that late? I don't know. Anyway, it just seems strange, right? Not necessarily suspicious. It's not like you don't have the right to, if you want to, go do something weird like that. It's a free country. If you want to get up at 2 in the morning and go for a sandwich in the middle of a polar vortex, you're welcome to do so. It's something that 99.999% of the population probably would never even consider doing. So you have to wonder why do it. And then the coincidence that in the middle of doing this extremely unusual thing, he happens to randomly encounter 2 people who recognize him from the show, shout insults and slurs at him, and physically assault him. And apparently, it wasn't like these were 2 people who were specifically out to get him. They were apparently out to encounter any random person they wanted to attack, and they just happened to run into him. So these people, you're telling me not only did this actor guy leave his nice warm house at 2 in the morning to go get a sandwich from Subway in the middle of, 20 below in a frigid Chicago night, but 2 racist thugs also happened to be cruising the streets at 2 in the morning on a 20 below Chicago winter's night looking for random victims to encounter on foot? Not only is it hard to believe that he would go out for a sandwich in those conditions at that time of night, it's hard to believe that 2 criminals would be looking around for anybody to assault on foot in that weather. Who are they likely to encounter? Seriously. The snowman from Frozen? Who the hell is out there in this kind of weather, in these conditions? Bigfoot? Now, I guess if you live in Chicago, you might be used to extreme wind chills, and maybe there are going to be some people out and about. But if you have 2 racist thugs who want to go out and beat somebody up, why would they pick the most unlikely place to encounter a potential victim to stalk for victims, right? That doesn't make any sense. It's just, there's so many questions about the whole thing. And then he had supposedly been struck by these 2 big guys who poured chemicals on him and tried to strangle him with a rope. Not a mark on him, right? Now, I'm a civilian. I don't get in fights or combat or anything like that. last time I got hit, well, the last time I got hit outside of the fencing club, but that doesn't really count because we wear masks to protect our face, fencing masks. So even if I do get hit with a sword or even a fist, I mean, there's a fencing mask there. But the last time I got hit in anger, right, was when I was in high school. Some kid picked a fight. And I get hit once in the face. And it not only did it hurt, it left a mark. Eye was bloodshot, huge bruise. And this was just from some scrawny 16-year-old kid. Because all I was another scrawny 16-year-old kid myself back then. So wait a minute. A friggin' skinny high school kid punches you in the face one time, and you're going to have a mark that's going to last for like a week. This guy gets jumped by two grown men who not only attack him, but at one point have physical control of his person enough so that they've got a rope around his neck. And you're telling me he didn't get hit once in the face or anywhere else it would leave a mark. And that rope around his neck didn't leave any rope burns or anything like you get from, I don't know, somebody trying to choke you to death with a rope. And you could say, well, he had a winter coat on and stuff. I was in a vehicle collision where the seatbelt tightened suddenly in the collision. The seatbelt tightened over a full winter parka, a long sleeve sweatshirt, and a t-shirt. So I was wearing 3 layers of clothes under this, 2 of them fairly thick winter garments. The seatbelt never got inside my collar. It was on the outside. So there were 3 layers of clothes between the seatbelt and my neck. I still had like a rope burn from the seatbelt on my neck. All right? And that was from something that touched me in one spot like this. Not something that was wrapped around my neck and it's somebody trying to choke you. So you're telling me none of this stuff left a single mark on him. Either this guy's real name is Kal-El, Superman, or something's fishy in Denmark. So I immediately started to see, this doesn't really hold up. Now the police are telling us that not only is this a hoax, as the headline says, they're also saying that he's being investigated for faking the mailing of a threatening letter that he received with MAGA, M-A-G-A, Make America Great Again, the Trump slogan, on the envelope that contained foul language and threats. It also apparently contained a white powder intended to provoke a panic. Now, this turned out to be like ground up aspirin or some other common pill, i.e. something harmless. But, naturally, I mean, when you get a letter in the mail with a white powder in it, your first thought is like anthrax or some other kind of biological agent. This is not. So, now the authorities are saying he's being investigated for sending that to himself. And he has been charged for filing a false police report in connection with this hoax. Apparently it was a hoax. There were no attackers. Apparently the so-called attackers were actually 2 guys he knew from his TV show who did this as a favor and because he apparently paid them a large deal of money. They actually have a check that he gave them. I mean, if you're going to pay people to fake a crime, you pay them with a check, really? I mean, talk about dumb criminals. I mean, it's no wonder this guy got caught. But the thing is that it was fake. And when I first heard about this, and I thought, before I started hearing the details, it sounded so fishy, I thought it was legit, that this poor guy was, because that's how everybody was talking about it, right? All in the news, whether it's CNN or Fox News or any of these other things, everybody in the news was talking about this as an established fact that there had been an attack. Not that there was a reported attack. Not that allegedly he was attacked. That there was an attack and it actually happened. The only question was, who did it? Was it, as he said, Trump supporters, or was it just somebody trying to rob him? And it's interesting that he made such a big deal about that it was Trump supporters. He apparently had the people that he made the deal with to stage attacking him. He apparently had them buy the rope. He apparently also had them buy red hats. Now, they couldn't get their hands on actual MAGA Trump hats, so they bought just sort of generic red hats. But he apparently did have them buy red hats. And he said during the description of the assault that they said, repeated several times, racial slurs and other bad language while they were attacking him. And then they also explicitly said, this is MAGA country. Again, the Make America Great Again, the Trumpian slogan, in other words. So he made sure to explicitly state that, because he could have blamed anybody, right? If this was just about getting on TV and getting publicity for himself, he could have said he didn't know who it was because they were wearing masks. He could have said, it was a black guy. He could have said it was a white guy. He could have split the difference and said one was black and one was white. He could have said it was an Eskimo, something completely absurd that would be very unlikely. It was an Aborigine from Australia. Something that would have been like really out of place and kind of like why would you even think that? If he was really concerned about not, faking the attack, but not stereotyping innocent people. But no, apparently this was equal parts free publicity for himself and smear your political adversaries. And he went on TV, he did an interview where he was talking about this. In the interview, he made sure to say, when the interviewee said, why do you think you were singled out? He made sure to say, well, I'm very strong against Trump. Except he didn't say Trump. He said 45. And I had to sit there and wonder what he meant. Did he mean he doesn't like 45 records? Those little records? Did he mean he doesn't like 45 ACP? No, that can't be true. Who the hell doesn't like 45 ACP? I couldn't figure out, what does he mean, 45? And then finally it dawned on me, 45th president. It's like they think they're children at Hogwarts and Trump is Voldemort and they can't use his name. Like he's got superpowers, he's going to hear them or something. This is just ridiculous. This is childish. And first of all, if you think Trump's Voldemort, you're giving him way too much credit. But, it's just absurd. But he made sure not only to have the people either say or have it alleged that they report that they said this MAGA country and have them buy red hats as props, he specifically made sure to stress in the interview, well, I stand up to Trump and I think that's why I was singled out. So you can't even say, like, when you hear that somebody was racially assaulted, my response is that's awful, who would do that? When then you hear that it was actually completely fake, so much so that the police are charging him with a crime for filing a false police report and investigating him for sending that letter, which, could have prompted a terrorism scare with all the powder and the scary note in it. When you hear it's fake, I heard that and I had the same. I'm still saying that's outrageous. Who would do such a thing? It's just for a different reason, right? Most people aren't racist bigots and a-holes, which is why a lot of people were initially outraged that this guy, it was reported that this guy was attacked. But when it very clear became something was fishy and then that it was a hoax, so much so that he's being charged with the hoax, then the question became, who would do that, right? Who would fake being assaulted by racist bigots? I can think of a couple examples and none of them are flattering. Somebody who really didn't care about the actual victims of racist criminals and literally wanted to turn their experiences and their tragedies into a joke. Somebody who wanted to downplay the idea of, this being a legitimate concern, so much so that, again, they're spoofing it essentially, making a hoax about it. Somebody who wanted to make it harder for victims of actual racial assaults to come forward credibly and report the crimes. Can you imagine what's going to happen if tomorrow somebody comes forward and says the exact same thing happened to him in Chicago? Even if it's true, that person's going to have a hell of an uphill fight now because of this guy. It's just so asinine. So if you were a racist or somebody who wanted to make light of racism or racist attacks or make it, sort of discredit the idea that this is actually a thing, this is exactly what you do. It's not something you would do if you were somebody who genuinely claimed to be concerned about this crap. the thing that bothers me, right, is that it was so obviously fake. He goes on the interview and he doesn't have any emotion, right? The only time he showed any emotion on his face in that interview was when the interviewer was questioning him about things that were suspicious and didn't seem like his story was straight. Like at one point he said, I delayed calling the police because I was embarrassed. I didn't want him to think I was weak. And the second thing was when they asked him about why he didn't turn over his phone, he said, well, I got my private stuff on there. Yeah, but the phone also allegedly had a recording of you being attacked because you were apparently using the phone to communicate with your manager when you were assaulted. You know, that's the only time he showed any emotion. When she cast doubt or had to ask him to explain himself in some way, such that he felt he was having doubt cast on him. The only other time he had any emotion in his voice or face or anything else was when the interviewer asked him why you think you were singled out, and he said, well, I come very hard against 45, meaning he stands up against Trump. So, okay, he's talking about Trump, and you can tell he's getting mad. He's getting angry. But not when he's talking about the actual assault, right? So when he's talking about a political figure he doesn't like, and when the interviewee is asking him hard questions to, explain yourself, sir. Why didn't you do this and this if this really happened? Then he gets angry. But when he's talking about actually being physically assaulted and somebody who practically tried to strangle him to death only a few days before this interview, he's calm as a cucumber, easy as eating pancakes. Not a single sign that he's emotional. I mean, you would think an actor would be a better actor, right? If nothing else. He's obviously not a screenwriter because look at the story he came up with. Going out for a sandwich at 2 a.m. in the middle of a polar vortex and just happening to encounter two racist people with Trump hats who want to assault him and are already carrying bleach and a pre-tied noose on the street at 2 a.m. on a 20 below winter's eve in the city of Chicago. Yeah. I knew something was wrong here. And one of the reasons is, as a cyclist, I've come as close as you can to being the subject of hate crimes or hate violence without actually being a member of any officially designated minority group, right? I have had people try to kill me just because of the group I fit into. It's just, that has to do more with the fact that I bike than anything else. But yes, I have had people try to run me off the road, actually hit me with cars. I've been shot at with pellet guns. I've had bottles thrown at me out of the windows of moving cars going at traffic speed. And I have had I remember one time I did report something. The police basically told me your blood's worth less than car paint. Basically, if the car's not damaged when it hits you, it doesn't matter that it was on purpose. We're not going to do anything. This isn't a rip on the police, by the way. It's just what happened. Well, needless to say, that made me kind of mad, right? And I remember describing even something that happened when I wasn't on my bike. Way back when I was in high school, I got run over when I was on foot walking my dog. A hit-and-run driver. Now, that person, I don't believe, hit me on purpose. I believe it was an accident. However, they fled on purpose once the accident occurred. They never even stopped. And, as a result, I was left to bleed out on the side of the road and die like a roadkill. Now, fortunately, I didn't. An ambulance was summoned, and people came and took me to the hospital where I was informed that my leg would be a half-inch shorter for the rest of my natural life. Lovely experience. But anyway, the point is, I've been told by people, when I tell the whole story, and I get to the point of being left on the road to bleed out, well, the guy drives off down the road, never to be seen again or caught by authorities. I have been told that people I'm talking to have noticed that my voice changes, that my mannerism changes, that the way I'm standing changes. People have even said to me, man, are you all right? One person I remember actually took a step back when I was describing this incident. Because even 20 years later, even though it wasn't a deliberate attack, it still gets me mad. So here you have a guy who claims that he was physically assaulted on purpose by people who practically tried to strangle him to death in the middle of the street for no other reason than he fit into a category they didn't like. And he shows no emotional investment in that experience, no anger, no anything. The only time he showed any emotion was when the interviewer asked him a few hard questions and when he was talking about Trump, whom he apparently dislikes very much. Now, it's his right to dislike Trump, just like it's another person's right to actually admire the guy. It's a free country. You can like and not like whomever you so choose. But when you frame, when you create a fake hate crime in order to disparage the character of your political adversaries, whom you dislike, wasting police resources, they get 25 officers investigating this crap. 25 officers in a city with gang violence and shootings and all kinds of awful stuff, serious crimes with real people that were hurt. They get 25 officers, well, 24, investigating this joker, this guy. Now, innocent until proven guilty. I must be said, this guy's not convicted of a hoax. He's been charged with the hoax, specifically with filing a false police report. But there were so many questions that people should have known it was a hoax earlier. It should never have got to the point where they were wasting 24 police officers on this and thousands of dollars of tax money. It should never have gotten to the point where this made it to the news. The newscasters should have said, you know what? Something's not right here when they were doing their research on the case. And if they included it at all, it should have been a stock file photo of the guy from his TV show or whatever, and like a 30-second blurb saying that actor so-and-so claims that he was assaulted, police are looking into it, and then on to the next thing. Given the level of credibility the story had, given the inconsistencies, given the absurdities, not instead, oh my God, this happened, this actually happened, and it's just a question of, was it two Trump supporters, like they repeatedly said, hammering the point home? And back to, why would anybody do this? Who the hell would fake a hate crime? I mean, unless you're trying to throw victims of real hate crimes under the bus, destroy their credibility, make it harder for them to come forward and be taken seriously, make light of the unfortunate things that have happened to them. So basically, unless you're a complete and total jerk and a racist to boot, who would do this? Well, somebody who just wanted to get their name on TV and or didn't care that it would do all of those things because their main goal was simply discrediting their political opposition as well as getting their face in the news. And that it did handily. Virtually everybody who talked about this case talked about it not in terms of an actor reports he was the victim of a racist assault, but in terms of what does this say about Trump supporters and about anybody who doesn't fit our left-of-center, little, narrow political clique? And the vast majority of them seem to be going from the perspective that if you're not to the left of Trotsky, if you're center-left, if you're to the center, if you're center-right, even if you're right-wing, you're some kind of horrible bigot and an a-hole that's going to go out and try to beat somebody to death in the street. Now, we know there are people like that in this country, both on the left and the right. Antifa, anybody. But the point is that the vast majority of people, left, right, black, white, purple, whatever, are civil, decent human beings. Which is why, by the way, this hoax worked. Once it started getting traction in the news media and getting reported as a confirmed event, even though it wasn't, people immediately started talking about it because, oh my God, this actually happened. Who would do such a horrible thing? The outrage was there because most people are decent. And that's the worst part of this thing. To perpetrate a hoax that sought to characterize the vast majority of non-far left people in the country as racist, bigots, and violent folk, as well as get his name in the papers and on TV, this Jussie Smollett character was depending on the very decency that he's denying that the vast majority of people in the country have, right? He's saying, unless you fit into my narrow political clique, you're a hateful jerk and a bigot and an a-hole and whatever. If that's the case, this story would never have taken off. The reason it became something that everybody talked about, to the point where the fact that it was a hoax mattered, and they were wasting police manpower on it, and it was getting reported, is because most people aren't the bigots that this guy's trying to make him out to be. And people like him in the media. And, you know, when I first heard about this, just like everybody else, I said, that's awful that that poor guy was hurt. When it very quickly became apparent that not only were the people that he was casting aspersions on not the assailants, but that he was never assaulted in the first place. It was, a staged, it was as fake as his TV show. That at that point, I didn't just get disappointed. I got mad, all right? And I got mad because of this. Not only is he making it harder for the victims of real crimes to come forward when some dirtbag hurts them, not only is he wasting police resources, wasting taxpayer dollars, further dividing the country, further polarizing politics. He did all this knowing that it was false. It wasn't like he really got assaulted and he just mistakenly thought that, he saw a red hat and thought it was a Trump supporter, when in reality the person was wearing a Cardinals hat, or something else red. No. This was completely fabricated, according to the authorities who are charging him with the hoax, from the ground up, to either get on TV or frame his political adversaries, or both. And he knew there was no validity to it. To any of it. That's disgraceful. That's disgusting. That's... Like I said, who would do such a thing? Well, this guy, apparently, and here's the problem. The only penalty you can get for this, following a false police report, is a fourth-degree felony. You get maybe 3 years in jail and a $25,000 fine. Now, $25,000 fine is peanuts to a rich actor. 3 years in jail. Do you really think that this politically connected guy, he's a buddy with Kamala Harris, for Christ's sake. Do you think this politically connected guy is going to do a day in jail, even if he's convicted? I don't think so. Okay. I think it's very clear that when you have somebody who's a public figure and who's connected to other public figures, we have a two-tier justice system in this country. Not officially, not on the books, but in terms of how things work, right? This guy claims an assault that can't be documented in any way, and whose story doesn't even really hold up to the most basic scrutiny. He had 24 police officers investigating his case. How about that poor woman whose son is killed in a drive-by? How many police officers does he have investigating his case? If he's lucky, one for 5 minutes. And he wants to talk about inequity. Well, Jesse Smollett, shame on you, all right? Congratulations on being the very thing that you claim to be against. A callous, apparently bigoted, asinine prick who hurts people and doesn't care. And if you don't think that wasting that many police resources, wasting that much taxpayer dollars, deliberately slandering more than half the country that doesn't fit into your little, narrow, tiny political box, if you don't think all of that's going to do an incredible amount of harm, and hasn't, you're as naive as you are callous, okay? It's really a shame that there's not a penalty beyond 3 years in jail for what this guy is alleged to have done. And worse, it's too bad there's nothing that can be done about the media. The same media that ran with the story without checking it out, just because it happened to conform to everything they already thought they knew about people that weren't like them politically. People that weren't like them. They were ready to believe the worst about people who are dissimilar to them. What does that sound like? Well, that kind of sounds like bigotry to me, doesn't it? Yeah. So a credulous, incompetent, and bigoted media, let's not even use the word biased, let's call it what it is, bigoted media, made this hoax possible. So if he's going to be facing 3 years in prison, it's really too bad you can't do the same thing to the journalist that helped him pull it off, right? Now, obviously, freedom of speech, and I'm a big defender of freedom of speech. But I'm also not a big fan of slander and libel and lying and deliberately misleading the populace. And people are so fracking incompetent, they should not be doing that job. And the news media, every time you think it can't sink lower in terms of getting basic, easily researched facts wrong, it sinks another rung lower. At some point, it's like, okay, look above you. There's the Earth's crust. You're down in the magma now. You're lower than a snake in a wagon rut, right? And if what this guy did was low, what do you think what the media did was, right? All they saw, they didn't care about truth, about justice, about fairness. All they cared about was that this proves our point, man. Yeah. And now some of them are having the audacity to argue that, well, just because this particular case that we all jumped on and used as the premier example of our political adversaries being evil fiends, just because this turned out to be completely fabricated for publicity by a cold-hearted, callous prick, doesn't mean that our political opponents still aren't heartless fiends and bigots and criminals and whatever. In other words, even the fact that they went along willingly with a hoax just because they agreed with the politics of the hoaxer, even that doesn't make them question their ideological marching in lockstep. Yeah. I mean, is it any surprise that whenever I open one of these newspapers, I almost expect that when I open it up, I expect to hear canned laughter. The news is a joke nowadays. And they can't blame politics for it. They can't blame people who rip on the news. Whatever you think of Trump doing that. I've done it enough myself. I'm doing it right now, obviously. They can't blame criticism of the news for, well, people don't trust the news because people are so busy criticizing the news or because the president says bad things about the news or whatever. No, the reason people don't trust the news is because the news is no longer trustworthy, right? Trust has to be earned and then maintained. They have done neither. And, the interesting thing about trust, it's kind of like a reputation. You can spend your whole life building it up. It can be destroyed in a heartbeat. And that's exactly what this guy did, and that's exactly what the media's done. And this is just friggin' sad, man. This is just sad. I hope people understand that this wasn't just an accident. The only reason this became such a widespread hoax is because people were ready to believe the worst about other people who were different from them. And like I said, what does that sound like? It sounds like bigotry to me. Lone Rider out.